we got the Betsy DeVos hearings going on, right? And you know, she kind of reminds me, like, I think I'm trying to think of like what she like. I'm like listening to her name, like she sounds like some like evil stepmother villain or something like that from like a Disney movie. And then it hit me. She reminds me of Angelica Houston from The Witches. I don't know if you guys ever saw. I don't. You know, everyone's varying ages, so either if you're older and you have kids, or if you're around my age and you were a kid, I don't know if you've ever seen The Witches. If you haven't, very good movie. But like, she reminds me that they hated children. The witches hated children. Like they smelled to them. They actually, like in the movie, the whole big plot was that they had developed a serum that turned all the children into mice because they wanted to get rid of all the kids because the kids smelled bad to them, right? But that's like what she reminds me of. She reminds me of one of these witches from this movie, and they come together and they convene, and they're hideous underneath their mask and stuff. And like, that's just what I thought of. Like every time I see a picture of her, it just reminds me of the witches. But like, I mean, and she's awful, right? She has no experience in public, like no experience in public education, right? She's never taught, no administrative experience. She raises a lot of money to defund public schools and to lobby against them. Her kids didn't go to public schools, like nothing, right? Like I saw a post and somebody was like, well, she's never even had any experience managing student loans. But hey, she, I guess she owns a creditor, a debt collections agency that takes money that recoups, you know, money from people who owe their student loans. So it's just like all types of stuff. You know, Bernie had a sick burn earlier with his, you know, if you didn't donate, however, it's like what, $200 million or whatever, would you even be sitting here right now? Like, yeah, that's that Brooklyn. That Brooklyn be coming out of Bernie. You know, I give Bernie a hard time sometimes. He's not above reproach. But that Brooklyn, when that Brooklyn comes out, it's like, ooh, burn. But real talk though, like she's a disaster, and it means like we really need to be paying attention and rethinking the way we engage in education advocacy. And what I mean by that is Democrats right now, liberals, progressives, leftists, whatever people are calling themselves today, I really don't care. Like I don't care what new acronym y'all come up with, but whatever it is. The way people are acting right now, like the sky is about to fall and life is over as we know it. And I'm not minimizing how awful and atrocious she personally is, right? What I'm going to emphasize is the need for us to get involved. If education, even if education is not an issue that's like top on your priority list, like let's say you don't have kids in school anymore because they're all grown, or you don't have children yet, you're a young professional or you're just a young worker and you're not even there. This is still like education is so central to the functionality of our existence that it absolutely demands all of our concern. Like I get we got so many different things that demand our attention, but like education and education efforts, like I said, like what's going on in New York with the lack of equitable funding, right, which is actually mandated by law, and the state of New York still isn't in compliance after over 10 years. So there are so many issues, and that's just one level of an issue, because we're really upset about this thought of defunding public schools, because like Republicans are like Democrats on steroids, right? So like when it comes to education, because you have this faction of Democrats that have no problem with school privatization to a degree, right? They have no problem with public charter schools, and I'm gonna be clear, I don't think that charter schools are inherently evil, right? Like I'm gonna be real. Like that's kind of charter schools are kind of controversial, particularly in Black communities, not because they're evil and they're all so bad, but because real talk, when you look at what public education system has left for many of our communities, there are no options. So if there is a viable option that opens up, there are parents who are going to take them. So I have seen a few charter schools that are positive, but that's because of the way they're structured. So there are a lot of issues and loopholes and policy and the governance and stuff. And I absolutely agree. But I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh my God, they're so evil, it's the end of the world. Charter schools need to be held accountable the same way regular public schools should be. We should not be phasing out or closing, turning around, basically decimating public school opportunity to then turn around and give that same building or area to a charter school that then does not even perform as well, does not have the same requirements and oversight. Like those are huge issues that need to be addressed. But here's the thing. We should not just be angry and outraged by it just because it's a Republican on the other end. Now, I got a little pushback earlier when I said this, but I absolutely mean this. When Arnie Duncan came in as Secretary of Education in 2009, after the decimation of public education opportunity on the south and west sides of Chicago, barely anyone said anything. Because don't nobody care about screwing over little poor brown and black kids unless it possibly threatens what's going on in your neighborhood. That's real talk. There are a lot of people like, oh, no, we did, but he's not as bad as she is. I'm not even talking about bad because, see, Democrats, leftists, liberals, progressives, whatever people are calling themselves these days, we need to stop with that. It's not as bad as, or this wasn't as bad as, or this is far more worse than. It's a scale. It's a spectrum. It's a spectrum of awful. Okay. It's a spectrum of It's a spectrum of awful. It's a spectrum of opportunity that is being sucked out and taken away. Whether we're talking about poor children living in rural areas, regardless of race, or urban areas, because we have some pretty diverse, poor areas in some urban areas too. It's not just rural versus urban poverty, but we need to look at the bigger picture. We can't just say she is awful and Republicans are bad without looking at the manner in which Democrats have set the stage for the crisis we're having right now in education with their siding and lining up with people like the Betsies of the world. Because everybody want to talk about Cory Booker. Why do people hate Cory Booker so bad? That's one of her favorite Democrats. Let her tell it. They sat on the board together. There are too many Democrats who have been cozy with the likes of Betsy over the last several years, over the last decade or more. They've had no problem turning around schools, dumping kids and families out of their neighborhood school and putting in some corporate sponsored BS that doesn't even have to take the neighborhood kids. Like when I worked in Chicago, like the thing about Arnie Duncan absolutely bothers me to no end. Primarily because of one of my projects when I worked for the nonprofit that I worked for right after law school doing public housing and public education law policy was tracking school closures. And particularly, I looked at the communities that were the plan for transformation communities. And we did this massive project. We looked at all the major plan for transformation communities. And these were communities, the Chicago House. Right? That's a whole nother conversation we'll talk about some other time. But we looked at the schools that were existing. What was the homeschool based on the boundaries and things like that? And we talked to the service providers at these sites to see where were the kids going, because the service providers on the sites, usually they knew where all the public housing kids were going because they interacted with them. But usually if there were other children on the property, they also knew where they were going to school as well. So we were able to track for several of the properties, like where kids were going to school. But that didn't really tell the whole picture because, usually in cities, you have certain boundary guidelines, right? Like schools, like elementary schools can only be but so far away to be a homeschool, that type of stuff, right? High school, same thing. So when you start going back and looking through old Chicago Board of School records, meeting notes and stuff like that about school closures, turnarounds, and things like that, you look at 1 year and it'd be a list of schools that are closing and being turned around. And then they'll have the school that the kids are going to. So when you look at what we called the Stateway, the Mid-South area, when you look at Stateway Gardens and Robert Taylor Homes going down State Street, that's about a 15 city block area, just lengthwise, right? That had Robert Taylor Homes, which had about at maximum capacity, 4,000 units. I forget how many were at Stateway, but two combined, very large, massive, 15 blocks of, can you imagine 15 blocks of public housing, high rises and stuff, right? There were approximately, I think 8 schools along that stretch. Every single last one of them, except for one, was closed. And the one that remained open was the one that was farthest down the way. When you go over across the highway, right? So there was a smaller complex called Abbott Homes. That neighborhood school right there was also closed. And those kids, and we're talking about elementary schools, right? So if elementary school students who ordinarily would have been able to walk to their school, their neighborhood school is closed. And then now, and this is all while Arnie Duncan, because they had the Mid-South plan, they were going to redevelop, they were going to do this, but they're just looking at straight data because these are failing schools. And the idea was that these kids at these failing schools would then get sent to a better performing school. But here's the kicker. So if this school is only performing at 35% A school that's performing at 47% is a quote unquote better performing school. So you have already a school that is struggling, but it's not struggling as much as another school. So you take the kids that are from this really struggling school to a kind of struggling school without any additional support. But then guess what happens? The next year, the school that all the kids got sent to, that one got closed too, and on and on and on. It was several years back to back that this happened. And it's happened to a population that at that time, because Chicago Housing Authority, because it's all Chicago, but the two agencies are not communicating. So you also have the Chicago Housing Authority moving families around at the same time. So there are multiple layers to this, but my problem has been with this policy of turning around, of shutting down, of not communicating with the communities. And we sit on our hands and we grin and bear it because these are Democrats. And it's okay because it's not that bad what the Republicans might do. But here's the problem. Nobody is talking about what we do as an alternative. Charter schools are bad. That's all we hear. Charter schools are bad. Charter schools are evil. Charter schools are the devil. Charter schools this. Charter schools that. Da 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 da. Like so this was infuriating. And I'm gonna be real with you. For a year, like I have kids. I had kids young. I had kids while I was in law school and stuff like that. So my kids did not come to Chicago with me the year I worked there. I only worked in Chicago for a year for the simple fact that there was not a viable, tenable situation. And this is right after Arnie Duncan becomes Secretary of Education. There was not a viable situation for me to bring my children into, because I'm sitting here knee deep, hearing the stories, talking to parents, seeing what was left behind. And then Rahm Emanuel comes in as mayor and he just totally blows all that out the water. So this is what we have on the Democratic side. And that's just in one area, right? That's just Chicago. There are people who have stories from all over the place. So yes, we need to resist and fight back, and we need to try to find a way to mobilize, strategize, and energize people around education policy, legislation, and demand better for our children. But we need to do so no matter who is running things. We need to do so no matter which party, because we have Democrats with their centrist third money, third way. We need to invest $20 million and doing X, Y, and Z and getting people to think the way we want them to think. No. Stop trying to get the Democrats to accept you and love you and listen to you and do right by you. This is like an abusive marriage people are in with the Democratic Party right now. They are going to continue to screw you over. Why? Because they don't give a damn about your kids. They don't care about your kids. They don't care about my kids. They do not care. Last week, like if any of you listen to Politics Groups or follow me on Twitter, last week, everybody's defending, because in District 5 in John Lewis's district, it's so wonderful and this, that, and the other. And I live in a quote unquote nice neighborhood. My son got accosted by a damn cop. Everybody's a damn Democrat down in charge down here. Don't nobody give a damn. They don't care. They want to be the nice version of Republicans. Not the actual advocates of the people we need and want them to be. So again, I know people see value and they want to be out there and reform the party. And I know that on the local level, there's been a lot of stuff people have been able to do. But quite honestly, it's going to take a lot more to actually reform the DNC on a national level to do what needs to be done. They are proving day after fucking day, excuse my language, that they are not worthy of your love, your loyalty, your hard work. And I know people are trying to save the party because we need to save the party. Nah. You need to just let that shit die. The Democratic Party is dead on arrival. They want to sink $20 million, centrist third way. We need to get the people back. How are you going to do that? What are you going to do? Huh? All of a sudden you're going to become progressive? Neera Tanden tweeted at Alexander the Meth. Alexander does a really awesome research. And she's like, way to go attacking a potential ally while we're trying to defend against Trump's minions or something. She said, a potential ally in what exactly? We sit here right now talking about education. Betsy is so evil, but y'all upset that people mad about Cory Booker, who rolls with Betsy on education. Let's just let that marinate for a few minutes. Like, how long will we continue to make excuses for these problematic ass relationships that these people who are borderline progressive, kind of progressive. I mean, like not progressive at all, but they do this one great thing, like say that somebody's racist who's racist. Like, how brave is it really brave to call out Sessions for being a racist when everybody named Mama knows that Sessions is a racist? Like, he's been a racist as long as I mean, like, is that really brave? Like, I don't really know. Because what wasn't brave of Cory Booker was standing there snickering when Madeleine Albright was on her whole little special hell in place for women, routine on the trail last year. Like that wasn't very brave of Cory Booker. Well, it wasn't very brave of Cory Booker to sit there in July, August of 2015, when no one thought Bernie had a chance of hell, and say really nice, positive things about how, they've worked together and he's good and this, that, and the other, to only several months later, once he's a threat, to start then trying to talk trash. That's not very brave of Cory Booker. And shout out to all the boot-looking Negroes out there who were just, oh my God, they're talking about Cory Booker versus Bernie Sanders. You think black people, what black people go follow Cory Booker besides y'all? Like, seriously. Like who's doing that? Like, where's that happening? Like, I'm really trying to understand.